right. Lively crowd. Tonight we're going to talk about the heart and the cardiovascular system. Pretty important topic. A lot of people here, that's awesome. I just want to encourage you tonight to not necessarily sway you one way or the other, but if nothing else, at least to pique your interest about what is really going on with our cardiovascular system, what is really causing cardiovascular disease, and what methods we're using to protect ourselves. I'm warning you right now that some of you here aren't going to agree with me, and that's okay. I guarantee you right now that a lot of your doctors aren't going to agree with what I have to say, and that's okay. But I encourage you to ask questions. We need to be asking more questions, especially with our family practitioners, our family doctors, with how we're treating these types of issues, because they're important, obviously. It's life or death, especially when it comes to the heart. So, and I always encourage people, always to research it out on your own. If nothing else, may I pique your interest enough to say, I need to explore this further. Because there's no guarantees that everything I'm saying up here is correct. And I always state that honestly, because we're always learning, we're always growing. The body that God designed is so amazing and so fascinating that we're lucky if we know 1% of what's going on with it. So I just encourage you just to research these things out for yourself. So let's get started. The heart function and heart disease statistics. The heart isn't about the size of your fist, and it's right over here over the left side of your chest. And it's designed to pump blood through your entire body. We know that. It's actually a network of over 100,000 miles, if you can believe that. There's 100,000 miles of tubing just making up your cardiovascular system. Veins, arteries, and capillaries. Some of these little capillaries down to the extremities, like in your fingers or toes, are so small that red blood cells have to go through them single file. And red blood cells are obviously microscopic. So we have a lot of really small vessels in our body. Paragraph B, heart disease statistics in America are alarming. The two major killers are heart attacks and stroke. A stroke happens when blood flow to the brain is stopped, and a heart attack is when blood flow to the heart is stopped. So just a few statistics, and this is right out of the American Heart Association's website. 60,800,000 people in America suffer from some type of heart disease. That's approximately 1 in 5. And these are the diagnosed statistics, so the likely number is much, much higher than that. 1 of every 2.5 deaths in the United States is from heart disease. To make this a reality for you, if there's 200 people in here, that means 80 of you. Heart disease. Every 29 seconds, somebody in America will suffer a coronary event, and every minute someone will die from some type of a heart-related disease. 34% of cardiovascular deaths happen before the age of 75. This is important to point out because if average life expectancy is somewhere between 77, 78, 79, that means 1 of 3 people are dying prematurely just from heart disease. And that's not God's intention for us. Stroke is the number 1 cause of serious long-term disabilities. And in 2007, heart disease cost Americans $286 billion. In 1900, heart disease killed about 1 in 7 Americans. By 1963, it was almost 1 in 2. And that's where the statistic still is. And then why is heart disease called the silent killer? Well, unfortunately, most of the time, there's no signs, there's no symptoms until it's too late. And it's really bothersome to me because we see a lot of people, especially in America, we've been kind of trained to think that you only have a sickness or an illness if you actually feel pain. So you can be overweight and you can eat fast food all the time, but you don't have any physical pain, and you just assume you're healthy. The heart disease statistics would tell you otherwise. Roman numeral 2, how does the cardiovascular system get damaged? So we're just going to go right into it. The heart has to be strong and healthy. Veins, arteries, and capillaries must be clean and clear. Blood vessels have to have adequate water. And the system has to be free of obstructions. So what weakens, blocks, and breaks down the cardiovascular system? high sugar and insulin levels from processed sugars and other highly refined foods, dehydration, high levels of rancid fats and oils, toxic chemicals. We know smoking causes heart disease, for example, excess alcohol consumption, and deficiency in nutrients required for a strong heart and blood vessel system. So we'll get into more detail on all those, but I just wanted to give you a general overview. The most critical factor, paragraph C, is inflammation. We've all heard about inflammation. But inflammation is what's actually causing the heart disease, this constant inflammation. And it's caused by the American lifestyle, the high stress, lack of exercise, toxins entering the body or environmental toxins, poor diet, chronic dehydration. This all causes thickened blood and constant inflammation of the arterial walls, which creates damage. This, in a nutshell, is high blood pressure. You can be dehydrated and have high blood pressure. You can have too much of these rancid fats and high sugars in your bloodstream, and you're going to have high blood pressure. You can be just chronically stressed out all the time and have high blood pressure. We know that. The way you want to kind of picture it is the heart has to beat at a certain strength to push blood all the way to those extremities. It's got to get blood to the fingertips, to the toes. And you know what a regular heartbeat sounds? It's boom, boom, boom. Well, when your body gets clogged and the arteries start getting clogged and you're dehydrated, the heart has to start working harder to get the blood to the extremities because its job is still to get it there. So it starts going boom, boom. It starts having to labor really intensively, and this creates a lot of damage over time. Paragraph D. The endothelial cells, I mentioned these briefly when we talked about the pancreas and diabetes. They line the entire circulatory system. They're a protective layer of cells that line all the veins and arteries. As they get damaged and inflamed, damage occurs to the blood vessels. It is critical to repair this damage. Your body is not going to just let this damage go unchecked. It's going to fix it, it's going to repair it, and it's the repairing of the damage to your veins and arteries that creates blockages in the system. We'll go into more detail on that. But what I love about this, and one theme that I have in every single class, is that God created a body that's a self-healing mechanism. The blocked arteries you're getting that's causing your heart disease and strokes is the body healing itself. Because the arteries and the veins are blocked and they're damaged, and the body has to repair them, because if those completely break through, you will hemorrhage and you will die. So the body is not going to allow you or allow those veins and arteries to completely break down all the way to the point where it breaks all the way through the veins and arteries, because that means death. So what it does is it repairs it. So the repairing that's going on, or the blockage that we think it's the blockage that causes the disease, that is actually what's saving your life, as hard as that is to believe. But when you understand how the body really works, it makes sense. Paragraph E. When the heart is forced to work extra hard, when the blood is thick, when the body's dehydrated, it starts to break down. So this triggers a cascade of really bad events that start to happen. And again, you might not have any symptoms that this is going on. But what happens is the heart starts to wear out. Remember I said the heart has to start to work really hard. So it starts to wear out. That can lead to congestive heart failure. And as these clots are starting to build up in the veins and arteries, they can break loose. And depending on where they break loose and what part of the body they affect, you see the different things that can happen in here. It can get into your lungs. That's a pulmonary embolism, heart attack, or stroke. Roman numeral 3, cholesterol. So we're just going to go right into cholesterol. There's so many things we could talk about when it comes to heart health. I'm talking about this subject mostly tonight, cholesterol, because it's just something that, I don't know how to even word this. It's just something that really bothers me. Let me just put it that way. It really bothers me what's happening with conventional medical approaches to heart illness and with this cholesterol issue. There's such mass confusion in this area. So hopefully by the end of tonight, it might not all be crystal clear, but at least you'll get enough information to maybe question what's going on out there and understand that maybe there's a different approach we can take. So I'm going to try to break this down really simple for you guys. And first, just starting off with what cholesterol is. Because when we think of cholesterol, what do we think? Bad. It's bad. I don't really know what cholesterol is, but it's bad. I mean, really, a lot of us don't know anything beyond that. I want you to understand what cholesterol is. Chol actually means bile. Stereos is solid. Ol is alcohol. Cholesterol is a waxy steroid of fat. It's basically fat. It is a critical life-saving substance. There is a reason your body produces cholesterol every day. Your liver produces cholesterol every day. Do you think your body's producing something that it's not supposed to have? Of course not. Your body needs cholesterol every day for a lot of functions, and we're going to talk about some of those functions. And this is what's really interesting about it, is that everybody who goes through medical school learns what cholesterol is and learns the critical function that cholesterol plays in the human body and how important it is to our health. So let's talk about some of the things. Paragraph B, cholesterol is a tool the body uses for various functions. What are the functions? Let's just talk about a few of these. There's a lot. This isn't all of them. Your brain is mostly made of fat. Your brain is fat and water. So when somebody calls you a fathead, I guess technically that's true. Cholesterol is actually necessary for creating the synapses in your brain, which is how your cells in your brain communicate with each other. Can't communicate without cholesterol. Cholesterol is required to synthesize vitamin D. Some of you may have heard that you have to have cholesterol and healthy fats in your body to utilize vitamin D properly. And a lot of people who have low vitamin D levels because they're on cholesterol medication and they can no longer synthesize or utilize vitamin D. But that's going to go for all of your fat-soluble vitamins. Your fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. So cholesterol is a carrier for all of your fat-soluble vitamins. And the example I give you is if your brain needs to use some of that vitamin D, it needs cholesterol to get it there. Cholesterol makes up the membrane. I mean, this is a big one. We're talking the membrane of every single cell in the entire human body. It's what makes your cells flexible. It's what makes them pliable. And it keeps them from being too rigid. It is literally the brain of the cell that communicates between the cells. It also provides a protective coating around the veins and arteries. Cholesterol does. Cholesterol is needed, if you look at what cholesterol means, solid bile. Cholesterol is needed to create bile. Bile is a critical component of our digestive system. It's an alkaline substance that the body uses to break down starches and fats. So without it, you cannot break down and process your fat. So again, you must have cholesterol to digest food. Cholesterol is critical in repairing your arterial walls from inflammation and damage. We're going to talk about that more. And cholesterol, this is a really big one. Cholesterol is a precursor to sex hormones. You get on drugs, statin drugs, you stop producing sex hormones. You cannot build healthy hormones without cholesterol being present in your body. So I hope this was brief, but I really hope you guys, if nothing else tonight, I want you to not think of cholesterol as this evil, horrible thing. Because it's not. So these are the functions of cholesterol in the body. I think these are pretty important functions. So let's go to paragraph C. Let's try to understand what these HDL and LDL mean. LDL stands for low-density lipoprotein. It actually takes the cholesterol that your liver is producing on a daily basis and it ships it to where the body needs it. And remember, every cell of your body needs it, your brain needs it, you need it for bile, for digestion. So your liver is responsible for taking the cholesterol and shipping it to where the body needs it, LDL. HDL stands for high-density lipoprotein. It takes cholesterol out of the bloodstream that's not being used, and it recycles it back to the liver to be reused by the body. So that's what HDL is. Just reminding you, remember, cholesterol is a critical nutrient for the human body. LDL is not bad. And what's amazing about the tests that they're doing to check HDL and LDL levels, HDL and LDL aren't even cholesterol. They are carriers of cholesterol. And the bottom line here is paragraph D, cholesterol is not the enemy. In fact, it is critical to human existence and reproduction. Why the confusion? We're going to get into that in Roman numeral 4. So Roman numeral 4, does cholesterol cause heart disease? I'm just saying it. The answer is no. I encourage you to research this for yourself. Like I said, I hope I've piqued your interest, if nothing else. It's going to be hard for people to accept that because this has been, what's the word? This is something we've accepted for a good 25 years now, that cholesterol causes heart disease. Paragraph B, why was cholesterol implicated as a cause for heart disease? So this is what's really important to understand. When surgeries were performed, surgeons noticed a buildup of cholesterol blocking the arteries. Cholesterol was assumed to be the cause of heart disease. The arteries are blocked. They go in, they do a surgery. They see it loaded with cholesterol, and they say, cholesterol causes heart disease. We need to fix the cholesterol levels in the human body, and we will solve the answer to heart disease. But in the last 40 years, heart disease statistics have not changed. It was assumed that LDL was the bad guy because it means low-density lipoprotein. It's a lower density, so it's the one that actually goes in and repairs the damage that's being done to the arteries. So it got the bad guy name. So I want to reiterate this just to drive this home. The arteries get damaged from lifestyle choices, and I'm going to talk in more details about that. The body has to repair the damage. It'll actually use anything floating through the bloodstream to repair the damage. Anybody heard of calcification, calcified arteries? It's the same thing. The body will take calcium, it'll take cholesterol. It doesn't care what it is. It's going to plug the hole because it has to repair the damage that's being done to the blood vessels. So cholesterol is getting the bad guy name because it's trying to protect you and save you. When it was discovered that you could lower natural cholesterol levels with a synthetic pharmaceutical drug, sales of statins increased dramatically. So this is interesting, paragraph C. Over half the people who have heart attack and strokes have quote-unquote normal cholesterol levels. Or do not have high cholesterol levels. They have normal cholesterol levels according to standards. This fact alone puts huge holes in the theory that cholesterol is a cause for heart disease. Paragraph D, Eskimos. Eskimos, it's always winter. They're always eating lots of fat and blubber and whale and seal, and I might be exaggerating that a little bit, I don't know. But that's mainly their diet. And they've measured their cholesterol levels, and they're anywhere from 200 to 240. They're not super elevated. And this creates a paradox. Does the food we eat really affect our cholesterol levels? It's a question we need to ask ourselves. Paragraph E, cholesterol the hero. So I just mentioned this. Cholesterol is repairing the damage. It's saving your life. That's very important to understand. We have a war against the wrong thing. Let's go to Roman numeral 5, the introduction of statin drugs. Statin drugs were introduced in the 1980s. Statins actually stop the liver from producing cholesterol. So this life-saving substance that you need in every cell of the human body, you need in the brain, you need to produce sex hormones, you need for bile and digestion, it stops the production of it. Just want that to sink in. That's what statin drugs do. But it lowers your cholesterol numbers. Paragraph B, the side effect of stopping your body's natural supply of cholesterol. So if you look at the side effects of statin drugs, or if anybody's experienced them or knows somebody who's experienced them, there's a lot of negative side effects to cholesterol. Why are there so many negative side effects to statin drugs? Because the cholesterol serves so many important functions in the human body. So one of the nicknames of statin drugs is the memory eraser or the memory zapper. Because remember, again, you need cholesterol in your brain. Neuropathy, which is nerve damage, anemia, cataracts, fatigue, muscle pain and weakness. This is a big one. Statins actually block the ability of skeletal muscle to repair and regenerate itself. People get major muscle problems, muscle fatigue, muscle soreness from taking statin drugs. Loss of CoQ10. CoQ10 is a critical nutrient that's found in every cell of the human body. It's what produces energy. It helps produce ATP so that you have energy in your cells, and it's one of the most important nutrients for your heart. A lot of people are familiar with CoQ10, and they take that for heart health. Statin drugs removes the CoQ10 from your body. And then, of course, loss of sexual function. And some of you might have heard this, but it's just, and this is, it's infuriating to me. I can't think of another word. Statins are marketed to children now. Children are actually being given statin drugs, and it's actually been proposed that all children are giving cholesterol medications as preventative maintenance for future relief of heart disease. This is their idea of prevention. Paragraph C, there are well over 900 studies showing the side effects and dangers of taking statin drugs. This is, and people are hearing this more and more. I think what I'm saying tonight might be a little bit of a surprise, but I think a lot of you have probably been kind of hearing some of these things because there's more and more information coming out about these statin drugs all the time. Roman numeral 6, what really causes heart disease? Paragraph A, just going to talk about genetics because genetics is, it's interesting and it's a little bit tricky because genetics do play a role. I mean, you are going to be only as strong as healthy as what was passed down from your parents. But it's not an inevitable. And I think that's the way we look at it a lot of times. We think, oh, everybody in my family had this, and so I guess I'm going to have it. Genetics does play a role. And I've talked multiple times I've mentioned in classes in the past, the Pottinger cat study, where he put cats on processed food, and within 3 generations, they were eating their own young and killing each other. It's because they get weaker and weaker genetically because of the foods we're eating, and it's no different in America. He actually predicted that by 4 or 5 generations that we'd be basically infertile and full of disease, which we are from eating processed foods. So this is very important to understand that genetics does play a role, but God created a body that heals itself. So reverse it, fix it, and we can do that by choosing what God gave us on this earth to eat. So we need to stop taking genetics as an inevitable consequence. And we need to start reversing our own genetics. Why? For our children, for our children's children. We don't know how soon the end does, but I think God's raising some people up right now. God's really stirring in the hearts of a lot of people right now. There's a reason for it. It's funny when I run across, and I'm not, I just hope you guys really understand that I have a sincere heart. I'm not making fun of anyone. But I met this gal, and she was from Louisiana, and she had heart disease, and she said, well, my mom had it, and my dad had it, and my grandma had it, my grandma, and I said, what does your family been eating for 4 generations? And you know what they eat down in the South. That's genetics, guys. That's everybody eating the same thing for decades and for generation and generations. So I picked on the South a little bit, but you just to drive home the point that a lot of times the genetics is just what's passed down from us from the lifestyle choices of people in our history. We can fix that. Paragraph B, the main causes of heart disease is oxidation and inflammation. So I just wanted to give you a brief description of what oxidation and inflammation are. Oxidation and inflammation basically comes down to what we do or don't eat every day. That's critical to understand. It's dependent on your daily lifestyle choices. In other words, heart disease is not inevitable. You have control over your own health and body. So oxidation is free radical damage. If you've heard that term, you've heard antioxidants, how antioxidants are really big these days, resveratrol and all these different antioxidants. What these are, I don't know how to describe it. They're cells gone wild. They're cells that go and they attack a healthy cell, the nearest healthy cell. And the foods we're eating are causing this free radical damage, the worst of which are the bad fats, the trans fats, the rancid fats. We'll get into more of that later. But that's what's causing this damage to the blood vessel walls. And then I just mentioned it right there in paragraph C. The two most damaging foods that go into the body that cause heart disease, diabetes, and cancer is sugar and your bad fats. And we'll go into those in more detail. Obviously, we know that the other toxins that people are putting in their body, especially knowingly and willingly, like alcohol and smoke from cigarettes, is going to cause the same problems. So let's jump right into sugar. Roman numeral 7, the damaging effects of sugar. Paragraph A, understand that we're talking about processed sugars mainly. Not really fruits, honey, maple syrup, not your natural sugars so much, and I'll explain why. But although in excess, these also can be a problem for a lot of people. And I just mentioned the worst, the high fructose corn syrup. I mentioned that because have you seen the nice commercials with the farmers and they're saying it's your body can't tell I haven't actually seen them. I don't have cable, but they say that your body can't tell the difference and it's just the same as sugar, and they wouldn't be trying to promote this if people weren't realizing that this was a problem. These commercials wouldn't even have to exist if there wasn't a problem. I hope most people realize that. I'm going to talk real quick about the glycemic index, and I don't want to get too much into it because it can be confusing to people, because what I really want to focus on is the fact, is the food processed or is it not? And we'll really get into more understanding of that in a couple weeks when we start into the food classes. Basically, what the glycemic index is, it's how quickly sugar is getting into your bloodstream. That's really important. So God created whole foods that when you eat them, it has a very controlled release of sugar into the bloodstream. So, for example, a banana might be high in sugar and not necessarily safe for somebody with major infections or diabetes, but for most people, a banana is fine. Controls the release of sugar into the bloodstream. It's bound with all the different nutrients that come in a banana. It's bound with fiber. Table sugar's not. God didn't make table sugar. I say that jokingly, but this is real because this is what's causing heart disease. This is it. So what happens is this processed sugar is going into the body with no control, no ability for the body to control the release of how quickly it gets into our bloodstream, the worst of which is what? Alcohol. It's straight sugar to the bloodstream. There's no control to how quickly that alcohol hits your bloodstream. Straight, constant sugar to the bloodstream. That's why alcohol is so damaging. When this sugar gets into the bloodstream, the body has to protect itself. One of the mechanisms it uses to do that is it produces insulin. Insulin takes the sugar and either moves it into the cells to be used as energy or it moves it out of the body elsewhere. But if you're bombarding the body with the processed sugar and your bloodstream spiked all the time, the insulin can't be produced fast enough, and we know what happens. We know we get insulin resistance. That's diabetes. That's why there's such a huge link between diabetes and heart disease. Everybody who's diabetic has a huge risk for heart disease. The way to look at this is that these processed sugars are literally like shards of glass. scraping against your cardiovascular system. So I'm talking all processed sugars, all white bread, white flour, processed sugars, alcohol, all of these things that we're consuming that are really high on the glycemic index, again, with no fiber, nothing to control it into the body. It's causing damage to the vessels, and the body has to repair it. That's a blocked artery. Does that make sense? So paragraph C, I just talk about some of the glycemic index. That's not, I don't want you to get too into that, thinking about that right now, but I will point out that processed table sugar, the glycemic index is 68, white bread is 78, and whole wheat bread that we all think is so healthy is 76, higher than table sugar. I stress over and over and over again that if you're eating bread, if you're eating pasta, if you're eating crackers, you're eating sugar. That's all you're eating. So we really have to have an understanding of that, because that's why diabetics, for example, are told, well, eat whole grains, but they're still diabetic for life because they're still eating sugar, but we have no understanding. We're not eating whole foods. Paragraph Roman numeral 8, the damaging effects of hydrogenated fats and oils. These are the really, really, really bad guys. These are the oxidation and the free radical damage is coming from these bad boys right here. The way they're processed, they're rancid. So your vegetable oils, your cooking oils, your canola oil, your soybean oil, your corn oil, anything deep fat fried. So what did we just say were the two worst things to put in the human body for heart disease? Sugar and fat. What are we eating? Donuts and French fries. Not a worse thing you can possibly put in the body. Now, when we get into the food classes, I'll give you guys a little bit of relief, because one of our goals is to replace everything in the standard American diet that is unhealthy with the exact same thing that's healthy. I have recipes on my website for pancakes. There's ways you can eat healthy and not eat these things. Actually, right before we came to class, Jen and I had a margarita. And our margarita was apple cider vinegar, lime, and stevia. And it really tastes like a margarita. So we're creating these things because we want eating healthy to be fun, and we want you to be able to eat cookies and things that we enjoy, but that aren't going to cause heart disease. Amen. So let's see. Where was I? I lose my train of thought sometimes. A, hydrogenated fats and oils. So here's where I explain a little bit about oxidation from free radicals. Free radicals are unstable molecules attacking the nearest cell, creating this damage. And you can see these on the labels. You see hydrogenated fats and oils, partially hydrogenated, trans fats. Trans fats are so bad. You have to know it's bad when a government or state agency will actually remove it from the food supply. I think a lot of you guys have heard about trans fats actually being removed from the food supply. I think it started in New York. And they're actually making restaurants, requiring restaurants not to use these trans fats. They are that dangerous for us. Margarine. Hopefully most people here now know about margarine. Margarine and these fake butters, I can't believe it's not butter. I can't believe it's plastic. That's what you're eating. It's literally one molecule away from being plastic. The hydrogenation process is actually a process that changes the molecular structure of the amount of hydrogen in the fat so that it stays more stable for longer periods of time, and it spreads easily on your bread. So it's convenience, of course, but it literally is one molecule from being plastic. So this is what's happening in your body when we're eating these foods. We're eating things that are literally gumming up our entire system because they're fake, they're not real. And here's my funny little paragraph B. Have you ever found an old potato chip or a French fry in your couch or in your car a year or two later? What's it look like? It's not real. It's not real, guys. Roman numeral 9, the conventional approach to heart disease. and I have to make this point, there is not a better system of care in the entire world for saving lives than the American medical system. If you have a heart attack or you're a stroke, there's nothing better in the world for saving your life. It's the rest of their approach to heart care that I think needs an adjustment. Bypasses save lives, but bypasses fail. They create a lot of damage into the area, and I've seen them fail as soon as 6 months. Some people have had bypasses 15, 20 years and they haven't failed, but they very often fail. And it's not recommended, and it's not understood what caused it in the first place, so of course no lifestyle changes are recommended. Paragraph B. Regarding long-term heart care, this is a subject we can't be silent about. We just can't. It's too many lives are at stake. And lifestyle changes are barely recommended beyond lose weight and exercise. Like, who's heard that 1,000 times? Okay, lose weight and exercise. I'll get right on that. You know, but there's no understanding. There's no understanding of how you do that. Like, what kind of exercise? What do I eat? I'm so confused because the American food supply is so toxic that I don't even know what to eat. So that's why we're doing all the classes on food. The role of diet's never addressed, and that's the problem. That's what's causing it, and the role of diet's never actually addressed. Cholesterol is not what's causing the heart disease. Cholesterol medications are not lowering heart disease risk. Their own studies show this. I originally had a whole list of references for you, but what I want to encourage you guys to do is to research this on your own. I'm not going to just give it to you. Go to PubMed. It's the government website with thousands and thousands and thousands of documented double-blind placebo research studies. You will see in their own studies clearly stated, because they must record all of these things for the public record, that cholesterol medications don't do anything to help you against heart disease. It's published information. PubMed, I don't know if it's pubmed.gov or just look up PubMed. The cool thing is that there's a lot of doctors, a lot of medical doctors in America that are understanding this. A lot of them. Just look when I talked about diabetes, there's a lot of medical doctors now jumping on board that understanding diet really does play a role in diabetes. There are a lot of doctors jumping on board that heart disease plays a role, or the food plays a role in heart disease. I'm going to give you one example, and I think this hopefully will kind of drive this point home for you guys. I have this article, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this article on the notes, on the class notes when I post it on my website online, just in case you guys want to share this with someone. This is a guy, his name is Dr. Dwight Lundell. He was the chief of staff and chief of surgery at Banner Heart Hospital in Mesa, Arizona. He's performed over 5,000 heart surgeries, this man has. This is just one example. I could have read you 10 stories just like this from medical doctors and surgeons. This is really starting to become more mainstream information. So I want to read this to you. It's kind of long, but it really drives it home. So I really want you guys to pay attention to this as I read this. We physicians, with all of our training, knowledge, and authority, often acquire a rather large ego that tends to make it difficult to admit that we are wrong. So here it is. I freely admit to being wrong. As a heart surgeon with 25 years experience, having performed over 5,000 open heart surgeries, today is my day to right the wrong with medical and scientific fact. We opinion makers insisted heart disease resulted from the simple fact of elevated blood cholesterol. The only accepted theory was prescribing medications to lower the cholesterol and a diet that severely restricts fat intake. The latter, of course, we insisted would lower cholesterol and heart disease. Deviations from these recommendations were considered heresy and could quite possibly result in malpractice. It is not working. These recommendations are no longer scientifically or morally defensible. The discovery a few years ago that inflammation in the artery wall is the real cause of heart disease is slowly leading to a paradigm shift in how disease and other chronic ailments will be treated in the future. The long-established dietary recommendations have created epidemics of obesity and diabetes, the consequences of which dwarf any historical plague in terms of mortality, human suffering, and dire economic consequence. Despite the fact that 25% of the population, 1 in 4 people right now, statin drugs are the number one selling, this is my side note, sorry, number one selling medication in the country, $29 billion industry, statin medications. Despite the fact that 25% of the population takes expensive statin medications, despite the fact we have reduced our fat intake, most Americans will die this year, more Americans will die this year of heart disease than ever. Simply stated, without inflammation being present, there's no way that cholesterol would accumulate in the wall of the blood vessel and cause heart disease and strokes. Without inflammation, this is the key, without inflammation, cholesterol would move freely through the body as nature intended. It is inflammation that causes cholesterol to get trapped. If we chronically expose the body to injury by toxins or foods, the human body was never designed to process a condition occurs called chronic inflammation. And I love the fact that he used the word designed. Side note. What thoughtful person would willfully expose himself repeatedly to foods or other substances that are known to cause injury to the body? Smokers perhaps, but at least they make that choice willfully. The rest of us have simply followed the recommendation mainstream diet that is low in fat and high in polyunsaturated fats and carbohydrates, not knowing we were causing injury to our blood vessels. This repeated injury creates chronic inflammation leading to heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and obesity. What are the biggest culprits of chronic inflammation? Quite simply, they are this overload of simple, highly processed carbohydrates, sugar, flour, and all products made from them, the excess consumption of omega-6 vegetable oils like soybean, corn, and sunflower that are found in processed foods. And here's his analogy. This is pretty good. Take a moment to visualize rubbing a stiff brush repeatedly over soft skin until it becomes red and nearly bleeding. Continue this several times a day, every day for 5 years. If you could tolerate this painful brushing, you would have bleeding, swollen, infected area that would become worse with each repeated injury. This is a good way to visualize the inflammatory process going on in our own bodies. Regardless of where inflammatory process occurs, it is the same. I have peered inside thousands and thousands of arteries. A diseased artery looks as if someone took a brush and scrubbed repeatedly against the wall. Several times a day, every day, the foods we eat create small injuries compounding into more injuries, causing the body to respond continuously and appropriately with inflammation. While we savor the tantalizing taste of a sweet roll, our bodies respond alarmingly as if a foreign invader arrived declaring war. Foods loaded with sugar and simple carbohydrates or processed with omega-6 oils for long shelf life have been mainstay of the American diet for 6 decades. These foods have been slowly poisoning everyone. This repeated injury to the blood vessel wall sets off inflammation. When you spike your blood sugar several times a day, every day, it's like taking sandpaper to the inside of your delicate blood vessels. And this is another key point here. While you might be able to see it, and I'll add, or even feel it, rest assured it's there. I've seen it in 5,000 surgical patients spanning 25 years. They all shared one common denominator, inflammation in the arteries. That innocent-looking sweet roll not only contains sugar, it's baked in one of many omega-6 oils such as soybean. Chips and fries are soaked in soybean oil. To make matters worse, the excess weight we're carrying around from eating these foods creates overloaded fat cells that pour out large quantities of pro-inflammatory chemicals that add to the injury caused by having high blood sugar. The process that began with the sweet roll turns into a vicious cycle over time that causes heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, as the inflammatory process continues unabated. The human body cannot process, nor was it designed to consume, foods packed with sugars and soaked in omega-6 oils. There's but one answer to quieting inflammation. That is returning to foods closer to their natural state. What you can do is choose whole foods your grandmother served and not those your mom turned to as grocery store aisles filled with manufactured foods. By eliminating inflammatory foods and adding essential nutrients from fresh, unprocessed food, you will reverse years of damage in your arteries and throughout your body from consuming the typical American diet. So this guy has some credibility. And I could have read 10 more stories at least just like this. We're really waking up to this. Paragraph C. Not only is cholesterol not the original cause of heart disease, but the statin medications cause complete weakness and degeneration of the human body. I'm going to talk about aspirin real quick because I think this is important. I've talked in the past about disease maintenance. The example is diabetes. You don't change the way you eat. Instead, you take insulin and metformin for the rest of your life while the disease process continues. Taking aspirin is the same thing. Your arteries aren't blocked because you have an aspirin deficiency. Okay, we might laugh, but that's what we're doing for preventative medicine. We're thinning the blood as much as possible so that it can squeak through those openings that we're blocking with the food we're eating. That's not preventative heart maintenance, and that's not going to reverse anything. In fact, aspirin kills 10,000 people every year. 100,000 people go to the hospital every year from taking aspirin. A lot of people know they can't take aspirin because it upsets their stomach so badly. Why? Because it eats your stomach lining. It causes internal bleeding. It causes kidney damage. It causes liver damage. And we literally pop this like candy. It's still a synthetic drug, and it's not preventing heart disease. I put some studies in here, and I actually cited these sources for you that mentions 4 studies where they did studies on aspirin that showed that it did not have any benefit in stopping heart disease, because just like in the diabetes example I gave you, if you're still eating the foods that cause the blockage, the aspirin, yeah, it might make you get through a little bit longer, but eventually you're going to get totally blocked, and it's going to lead to one of these fatal illnesses. What's fascinating about it is a physician, or I don't know if it was a company or somebody came along and they combined aspirin and magnesium, and all of a sudden there was a decrease in non-fatal heart attacks. But they didn't recognize the magnesium in the study. They said it was aspirin. It wasn't. It was the magnesium. We'll talk about magnesium. I like to talk about magnesium a lot. Paragraph E. Statin drugs take a perfectly healthy individual and lead them towards future drug side effects and illness. The side effects lead to more side effects, more problems in the body, more medications to fix each new problem. I've been pretty low-key up to this point, and I'm not going to get overly excited, but people take medications that aren't stopping or reversing disease. They cause side effects that cause other illnesses, so they take more drugs, and eventually they're on 10, 15, 20 medications. It's not health care. Cholesterol is not a disease. And what's really frustrating is somebody has a heart attack, even if they have normal cholesterol levels, what are they given? Automatically given a statin drug. Doesn't matter if you have high cholesterol or not. They automatically give somebody who's had a heart attack or stroke statin drugs because they're preventing future occurrences. Here's just a few quotes from other medical doctors. I'll just let you read those on your own. Let's get into how to prevent and reverse this. Heart disease can be prevented through basic lifestyle changes. And I should add, reversed. Many cultures exist around the world where heart disease is a very, very, very rare occurrence. And it's been a very rare occurrence. Even if you look at medical journals pre-1900, you don't see heart disease as one of the major illnesses causing death. It existed. It's always existed, but relatively few, especially compared to the epidemic that it is today. So there has to be a reason. And everybody wants a reason besides the food we're eating because that's really hard to deal with. But I'm here to encourage you that we need to deal with it. Paragraph B. We have to stop eating processed sugar. I know it's hard. It was hard for me. I've mentioned in classes many times that I was a sugar. Hi, I'm Vaughn, and I'm a sugar addict. I used to be a sugar addict, I should say. It's very hard. It's hard because of the chemical nature of what sugar is. And we'll talk about that when we get into the food classes. They showed that it triggers the same dopamine receptors that cocaine does. Sugar's really, really, really addictive. But you got to find a way. And we'll find ways. We'll do it together as community. Conviction of the Holy Spirit's what I needed because I'm way too weak in my own flesh. But you can do it, and we have to. If we're going to do what we're called to do. So this is white flour, white rice, all these white processed foods. We have to eliminate the bad fats, the rancid fats, the trans fats, the fried foods. The worst offenders, the combination of the two. The French fries, the donuts, all that stuff that tastes so good. Paragraph C. We must basically adopt a whole food, plant-based diet. I recommend eating quality meats, no antibiotics, no growth hormone, what fits in the palm of your hand once a day. I'm not technically a vegetarian. I won't say if I might get there someday. I believe the original creation story, there was no killing. However, most people eat meat, and I still do on occasion, but we eat too much. And if you look at a lot of the movies, documentaries that are out there, the China Study, Forks Over Knives, Eating, Food Matters, there's a lot of them out there, and most of them really implicate meat when it comes to heart disease. So I just want to touch on that real quick because I will say that we eat too much, we eat the wrong kinds. The way meat's been processed is really damaging the human body. If you already have damage to your body, it's almost impossible to reverse it if you're eating too much meat because it's really hard to process, it's really hard to digest, eating too much meat. However, people have been eating meat for thousands of years, and heart disease was a rare, rare, rare occurrence. So we can't just implicate one thing. And that's one thing that I don't really like about some of the documentaries. Some of them are really good about saying, hey, it's the processed foods, and it's a combination of things. But that's what it is. It's a combination of things, guys. You look at the way we used to eat meat. We'd shoot a deer in the forest. We'd get a turkey. We'd have to spread it out for our family of 4 over the course of 2 weeks. This is how we should be eating. Not 24/7. You can run to the grocery store and grab a T-bone just because you want to. So it's the convenience and the lifestyle we're living today that's causing it. So I just kind of wanted to make that point because people get kind of worked up about the meat issue. And, I think it's important that we not eat too much, but it's not the main thing that we need to implicate in this. So I also recommend consuming raw milk over the grocery store stuff. Land flowing with milk and honey. Somebody asked that question last class. We have been consuming milk for thousands of years. And milk can be a very, very healthy, nutritious food. But you have to eat it in its original form, the way God created that animal to produce it. Because the stuff we're eating, the cheese and the dairy products that we're eating, is causing lots and lots of problems. And I just have to use this example because this was used in the movie Forks Over Knives. Highly recommend the movie. They're really good. They talk about meat and dairy, but they also talk about the processed foods and the sugar. So they kind of tie it all together. And it's a couple doctors, Colin Campbell, who wrote China Study, and Dr. Esselstyn, who was a surgeon. Very, very reputable guys. And in the movie, someone made the statement, I don't remember which one it is, but they were talking about diet changes. And I thought about how hard it was for me to change my diet. I mean, I could eliminate some things, but some things were really hard, and I'd work on it, and then I'd fail, and then I'd try again. It's a process, guys. It's okay. Just get on board, but start the journey. You're not going to be perfect, especially starting tomorrow. But get on board. A lot of people think that diet changes are extreme, that not being able to eat cookies or pretzels or chips, especially when they go to a party, it's just impossible. It's impossible. You can start by not buying it so it's not in your own home, but when I go out, there's just no way I can resist that. And I know that's hard. I struggled with that for years and years and years. But I want to tell you guys what's extreme. What's extreme is having your chest ripped open, having a vein pulled out of your leg, trimmed, and sewed into your heart just to keep you alive. That's extreme, guys. Diet modification isn't that extreme. It's eating what God originally gave us. We can do it. Paragraph D, consume healthy fats. The whole good fat versus bad fat. And we'll really get into this more when we start talking about the food classes. Low-fat diets, bad idea. You want to get good quality fats. You can overdo it. People have gallbladders removed. People have health issues where too much fat is not good. But the low-fat diet, really bad idea. I'd love to sit up here and talk for an hour just about coconut oil. I just don't have time. But I mentioned some of the good fats that we should be consuming. Paragraph E, we must move our body. The blood needs to flow. Exercise is critical. That's what oxygenates the body. That's what's going to repair those veins and arteries, oxygen. And that's the best way to burn off sugar and keep you from having high sugar and high insulin levels. Exercise, exercise, exercise. Water, dehydration, major component to a healthy heart. Coffee, soda, milk, and energy drinks don't count. They're not water. They cause dehydration. What about salt? Just want to mention salt, just heart disease. A lot of people on low salt diets. Most people probably know this, but I just want to reiterate it. Salt of the earth. Salt comes from the earth. Salt's mentioned a lot in the Bible. Salt naturally occurring from the earth has 80 plus naturally occurring minerals. Very balanced mineral composition. It has sodium in it, but it has 80 some other minerals that are balanced with it. Table salt is actually a product of industry. It was never meant for human consumption. It's sodium chloride. They take salt from the earth and they strip all the other minerals out, so you're putting straight sodium chloride in your body. It's causing major, major, major problems. That's what's causing the high blood pressure, constriction of the arteries, the edema, the swelling, the kidney problems. All the problems associated with salt is white processed table salt. Should have a skull and crossbones on it. It could be in the grocery store and you can still choose to buy it or not, but it should have a skull and crossbones on it so you at least are aware, right? But you need to throw away the white table salt and you need to eat sea salt. And when I lived in Las Vegas, people were so chronically dehydrated and they had high blood pressure. The first thing I tried, I'm not saying it worked every time, but the first thing I tried, if somebody came in and I could tell they were dehydrated, because you can see it just by looking in people's face, I said, start drinking more water and start putting salt in your water. I can't tell you how many times people came back to me and said, I feel better, I have more energy, and my blood pressure is normal. Oh my gosh, taking salt to normalize blood pressure, what a concept. It's because we have no understanding of what salt is. Roman numeral 11, magnesium. Magnesium is the miracle mineral, the most common deficiency that exists today, and the most important mineral for your heart and your cardiovascular system. It's a vasodilator. It opens up everything. It opens up your blood vessels. It opens up your veins and arteries. The heart muscle itself contains very, very high amounts of magnesium. It's getting wiped out of our system. Why is magnesium wiped out of our system? I'll tell you what wipes it out. Stress, sugar, caffeine. American lifestyle. So there's no wonder we're deficient in these minerals, and there's no wonder we're having these epidemics of heart problems. It's not just the foods, the wrong foods we're eating. Well, I guess it's a combination of the two. We're not eating the right foods, and therefore we're not getting some of these basic minerals that the human body needs. So it's like a double whammy. I just want to mention, just to give you an example, because I'm not talking a lot tonight about high blood pressure specifically, just kind of in general. I really focused on the cholesterol issue. But one of the blood pressure medications that's given is called calcium channel blockers. A lot of you have probably heard this, calcium channel blockers. What's happening is we have way too much calcium in the bloodstream. Why? Because everything we eat is acid, and it's pulling calcium from our bones, so it's in our bloodstream trying to keep us alive, trying to alkalize us. So there's so much calcium in the bloodstream that it's actually getting in the magnesium channels of the body. And calcium is constricting. Magnesium is expansive. So the too much calcium in the bloodstream is constricting the veins and arteries. So they actually give you a drug that artificially blocks the calcium from being absorbed into your bloodstream. But what offsets calcium? Magnesium. Magnesium is nature's natural balance mechanism for calcium. So it's magnesium deficiency. I highly encourage anyone who's on a calcium channel blocker to see about trying magnesium and talking to their doctor about it to see if they understand it. And if not, maybe they can research it and maybe help you get off that medication if it's unnecessary. It might just be a simple mineral deficiency. Magnesium also regulates insulin levels in the bloodstream. And I firmly believe this, that if we prescribe magnesium instead of drugs, we would save tens of thousands of lives every year. Just this one little mineral. It's so important to the heart. I'm going to skip this. You can read this statement by the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. It's just another re-emphasis of the fact that this was information that they did in a study that showed magnesium actually worked better than statin drugs for heart health. Paragraph B, can you clear blocked blood vessels? Absolutely. Along with proper diet changes, the main components needed to clear blockages in the blood vessels, and this takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months, which I don't think that's very long to clear out blocked arteries. And I can tell you a lot of really cool stories about people who have had success in this. But reminder, it's buildup of cholesterol in the bloodstream. Change in diet is always the first key, and then taking things that actually clear it out. What's really fascinating about this is if anybody's had any surgeries anywhere in the body, a lot of times abdominal surgeries, you'll get buildup of this kind of clumpy scar tissue. You know what that is? Cholesterol. It's body repairing that area. That's what cholesterol does. People start taking, number one, systemic enzymes. They're taking it for their heart health, and they're like, all that fatty, weird scar tissue stuff I had is gone. I've seen that in a month just disappear. It's awesome. So systemic enzymes, what they do is they go through the body like Pac-Man, and they gobble up stuff that's not supposed to be there, excess protein floating through the bloodstream. We could talk forever just about enzymes and the benefits of enzymes in the body, but for this particular purpose, they will clean up that excess plaque that's stuck in the arteries. That's one of the things it does. The magnesium oil we already talked about, and I stress oil. You can do the oral magnesium, it just doesn't absorb as good or work as well. So you really want to get a good magnesium oil. Vitamin C, just want to stress that it needs to be a whole food source of vitamin C, not ascorbic acid. And unless you're taking a billion milligrams a day, it's not going to do that much. That's why a lot of people are told they have to take a minimum of 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day. Well, that's because most what people taking isn't really vitamin C. So, of course, they have to take a lot. But vitamin C is also known to clear out veins and arteries. And the last one is L-arginine. There's multiple food sources of L-arginine. It's an amino acid. It's highest in peas, the food P-E-A, peas. But what it does is it increases nitric oxide levels in the body. And one of the things I talked about earlier were those endothelial cells that are lining the veins and arteries. The nitric oxide repairs those. So the L-arginine will repair the endothelium and remove the blockage. Just what's awesome about it is the systemic enzymes alone do it. One of the companies I get it from, they've done tons of studies on it, proving it. All over the world, people have studied enzymes and show that it does this. The people who sell magnesium oil will tell you, hey, just the magnesium oil will do it. People who sell the L-arginine will sell just the arginine will do it. Imagine if you combine these things. It works really quick. God gave us some really awesome tools. Paragraph C, what other nutrients? Vitamin E actually relaxes the blood vessels. You don't want to take vitamin E pills for the most part, because most of them, if you look at the ingredients, it's going to say soybean oil. Vitamin E is very high in seeds. So sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, eating seeds, very high in vitamin E, natural, very good anti-inflammatory. The CoQ10 we mentioned briefly. Resveratrol, well known for its antioxidant qualities. Remember we talked about oxidation, free radical damage. The resveratrol helps with that. Another thing is something called astaxanthin, which is a red algae that's a super, super potent antioxidant. and then herbs. There's a lot of really good herbs. I'm going to talk about a couple because we're out of time. But cayenne pepper. This is really cool. So many awesome stories about cayenne pepper. Dr. Christopher, who was an herbalist in Utah, said he never lost a heart patient because he used cayenne pepper. And you can actually see people snap out of a heart attack and not go to the hospital from taking cayenne pepper. The health food store I worked at back in Las Vegas for a while, somebody actually collapsed, had a heart attack, took liquid cayenne pepper, put it in his mouth. A couple of minutes, he came to, he stood up, the ambulance got there, and he said, "I'm fine." He went home. Imagine the medical bill that saved. Jogulin. Jogulin is known as the immortality herb in China. There's a book I have called, it's just called Chinese Immortality Herb. Tons of studies that they've done specifically for the heart. It's good for a lot of things, but it strengthens the heart. It helps the heart to pump and work more efficiently. It lowers blood pressure. It lowers cholesterol levels. It's amazing heart healthy plant, and it's really, really cheap. Hawthorn berry, a lot of people have heard of that. Bamboo, I mentioned because of the high silica content. Silica is one of those building blocks of veins, arteries, muscles, tissues, cardiovascular health. Silica. That's why bamboo is so solid, because it's silica. Women, men too. I just say women. Women start taking silica and their hair, skin, nails grow better, thicker, stronger. I mean, guys might want to do that too, but it's amazing for that. It's amazing for that. That one simple mineral. Ginger, garlic, these are just natural plants that naturally thin the blood. They're anticoagulants, meaning they keep the blood platelets from sticking together and getting clumpy. White willow, that's where aspirin originally came from. White willow bark, that's aspirin without the synthetics. And ginkgo biloba, fantastic herb for circulation and for the human body. So just to reiterate, I know a lot of the diet changes are hard. I've been through it. I feel your pain. I have empathy for you. It's different for different people, what the difficult thing is for them to overcome. For me, it was sugar. But it's always different for different people. So I just encourage you, if nothing else, just to at least jump on board and let's see what God truly has in store for you for the rest of your life. Amen.
Check, check.
I have two questions. Does sea salt have iodine in it?
Yes.
Okay.
Very, very, very small amounts. If you're iodine deficient, you need to take sea vegetables, kelp, or an iodine drops.
Spirulina?
Yeah.
Would get it? Iodine?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there a cholesterol level that you would say is too high?
I would say if it's in the 300s, for example, that's definitely a sign of an imbalance. It's the thing, we don't exactly know how these LDL and HDL levels really indicate whether it's heart disease or not. Most of these studies and most of what these people are saying it doesn't. But I would say if it's way abnormal, it used to be healthy cholesterol levels were between 200 and 240. That was understood. The healthy cholesterol levels are 200 to 240. So I don't know if there's an exact number that's like the range, but if it's getting up there, I'd say it's a sign of something's imbalanced in the body. Because if you look at a normal, healthy person, it could, depending on what they eat, we've seen it as low as 150. We've seen it as high in 240 in healthy Eskimos, for example, that are eating lots of fat. So I'd say if it's going well beyond that, yeah, there might be something going on.
I just want to say something about fast food. I know a guy that for years ate junk food, and he was probably 100, 150 pounds overweight. He went to fast food restaurants all the time, and the last time he went to Burger King, he came out of Burger King and dropped over from a heart attack. So, yeah.
The silent killer.
Yeah. One other thing, I know a guy right now who his brother had a stroke, and the doctor said he needs to take aspirin to thin out his blood. And so he's really worried about himself, and he's starting to take aspirin. So what could I tell him about some aspirin he probably shouldn't be taking?
Instead of aspirin? Well, it's those things I mentioned. I just encourage people to research it, because I can't really say, hey, stop taking aspirin and take this, because that's going against what their doctor told them. So they really need to talk to their doctor about it. And if that doctor's not open to it, I say find another doctor, because there are more and more doctors all the time recognizing this. And if he's got major blockages still, that aspirin, yeah, it might be serving a purpose because it is thinning the blood. So you have to be cautious with it. But what you can do is maybe take some natural things also to actually start working on the damage and get to the root cause of it. It's not necessary to thin the blood in a healthy person. And if you're eating garlic and ginger and all those great natural foods that God gave us, you're not going to have a problem with thick blood.
What about Ezekiel bread?
Like in
Is it
general?
bad?
Is it bad for a healthy person? No, absolutely not. Somebody got excited. No, I mean, it's still going to have, okay, let me put it this way. It's the best choice of bread unless you're making your own from really fresh ingredients or you're using the ancient seed grains. We'll really talk about this more when we talk about the food classes. I don't think it's good if you're doing Ezekiel bagels every morning, you're eating 2 Ezekiel bread sandwiches for lunch, and you're having Ezekiel rolls for dinner. Is that fair? But it's a good choice. I mean, it's a whole grain sprouted bread. It's still going to have a higher glycemic index. And for people with already compromised systems, yeah, it's going to be an issue. If you were a diabetic, I would say, no, I would not consume even Ezekiel bread until you get healthy. But for the average person, in moderation, absolutely fine.
Yeah, I'm an RN, and I graduated in '80 with a bachelor's degree in nursing. And I just wanted to say that in the last 3 years, I've done a lot of research on all this that you're talking about. I totally agree with all that you're saying. I read that book by Dr. Lindell, and that was amazing. Awesome. I also wanted to say that there's a book out called Eat Fat, Lose Fat. You touched on it earlier about healthy fat. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to say that coconut oil, the benefit of that is that your body will not store it as fat like the other polyunsaturated and the omega-6 oils, all those vegetable oils. Your body stores it as fat, and that's why we have the obesity problem. But coconut oil, and I know olive oil is really good too, but coconut oil, your body will use it immediately as energy. And so, yeah, I just wanted to put that plug. I think you'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in the food classes, but yeah, I'm a big fan of coconut oil. By the way, that book that Dr. Lindell wrote, wow, there's 2 good ones. There's one called The Cholesterol Lie, and there's one called, yeah, he wrote The Great Cholesterol Lie. So that's his book, if any of you are interested.
2 things. Is jogging bad for your heart? And if you're a weightlifter, what's a healthy protein alternative to meat?
Did you say is jogging bad for your heart?
Yeah.
No, it's great.
Okay. And then what's a healthy alternative to meat if you're like a weightlifter and you want to,
It's just a tricky question because it's just we've been so bombarded with the whey protein and you have to eat lots of meat, and it's just not true. A lot of UFC fighters, for example, there's a lot of UFC fighters that don't eat meat that are vegetarians that are ridiculously strong. They could take me out in a half a second. Boxers, athletes. Brendan Fraser, who's a raw vegan, was a triathlete, and everybody was saying, you got to do lots of protein, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. And he's like, no, I'm going to eat whole foods that God provided for me. And he blew everybody away. So it just so goes against the grain that it's hard. But I will tell you, what's not good is high amounts of whey, because it's dairy and it's processed. And there will people that will disagree with me, and that's okay. They'll say, if you get a pasture-raised cow and it's fresh whey and it's a good quality, then maybe that is okay. I'm not saying it's not. A good protein source is green foods. That's where every animal on the planet gets their protein, and they don't have osteoporosis. I'm joking, but it's true. You know, elephants have legs this big around. A good plant source, like I have one that I take, it's called Warrior Food. And it's half sprouted brown rice protein and half hemp. So sprouted brown rice, hemp, pea, there's pea proteins out there. Spirulina and chlorella, the algae, they're 60 to 70% protein by content. Really, really good quality protein sources.
How much magnesium should a diet have?
That's hard to answer. We just need to eat magnesium-rich foods. Because people are chronically deficient in magnesium, I'm really big on putting people on the magnesium oil and hearing story after story after story about how amazing they feel, or they're sleeping, or their pain's gone, or just whatever. Love it. I can't really give you an amount, and one of the reasons is we're so used to, we've forgotten how to eat food, so we're used to being told what amount of something do I need to take to replenish what I'm not eating in my food. So if we eat green foods, they're rich in magnesium. Raw cacao, raw chocolate, is high in magnesium. All your green leafies are very high in magnesium. But because people are so deficient, I really recommend people doing the magnesium oil at least for a month to replenish their stores and then start eating magnesium-rich foods.
If someone has had psoriasis for 25 years, what's the best way to cure that?
You want a one-word answer? Fasting.
And a second question, is melatonin safe for pregnant women?
You really let me get away with that one-word answer? I'm really surprised. I have people that have really bad cases of psoriasis. It's a problem internally with the liver or the colon being blocked, and it's diet change. I mean, that's totally the key. There's something causing that inflammatory process and toxins to come out through the skin. And really the quickest way to overcome it is to go on a fast. You'll see your skin clear up within a month if you can do a vegetable juice fast or a blended drink fast or some kind of a controlled fast. You'll literally see your skin clear up in a month. I've seen it many, 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 many times. For how long? Depends until it's gone. It just it depends on how severe it is, how many years. It's hard to know. The melatonin question is, if you buy melatonin, I don't think it's necessarily dangerous, but you have to understand that it's synthetic. Melatonin is something our bodies naturally produce. So if you're taking it in a pill form, it has to be from a synthetic source, because it's not taken from humans. So it's a synthetic. And if you're taking it for sleep, I encourage you to do the magnesium oil, because you'll sleep well, and it is amazing for the baby, the magnesium.
I hear that fish oil supplement is supposed to be good for lowering cholesterol. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, healthy fats. So fish oil, krill oil, algae, olive oil, all those will balance those numbers. You know, because people are still concerned about those numbers. Again, you might want to research more about what I said and see if you really think how critical that is. But if you get the bad fats out and you put the good fats in, whether it's fish oil, I'm glad you said that, is one of the best, there's no doubt. One of the best. Krill oil, if you're a vegetarian, you can do the krill oil or the algae oils. Otherwise, or olive oil, those types of things. But those will balance those numbers to absolute perfection.
How much sea salt do you recommend in a normal water bottle to add?
A teaspoon in a gallon of water. So in a glass of water, I just tell people to put like a pinch in there. And it might be, if you put too much, you'll know because it'll taste salty. But if you put the right amount in, it shouldn't taste salty. It shouldn't taste like salt water. So just a little bit is good. We'll do 3 more.
Did you say the magnesium oil, you don't take it internally?
The magnesium oil, you do not. There are magnesium supplements that you can take internally. They just don't work as well.
Okay, and are there foods that have systemic enzymes in them?
Enzymes are found in living foods. So when you eat raw living foods, they all contain enzymes. You're not going to get the concentrated amount you would need to help with a health issue right away. But you wouldn't necessarily have to take systemic enzyme pills. You could just start eating raw foods and you'll start to reverse that damage, which is what a lot of doctors are doing these days. Sprouting helps too. Sprouting really increases the enzyme activity. Thank you. 2 more.
Okay, got a question about the magnesium oil. If you're not taking it, digesting it, what do you do for, how do you use it for sleep in that?
It goes in through your feet. You're going to do foot baths. So you're going to do a foot bath in it. The body's going to suck it up through the feet. I love giving this example. The feet is the quickest way to get anything into your body, into your bloodstream. If you have a colicky baby, rub a little lavender oil or something on its feet. Does the trick. If you don't believe it, take a clove of garlic and rub it on the bottom of your feet and you'll taste it in 3 seconds. So putting stuff on the bottom of your feet, your body literally sucks it up, and it's going to help. It's going to get to the cells and the bloodstream and everywhere it needs to go through your feet. Now, the other cool thing about the magnesium oil is you can take it and apply it topically directly to where you have a headache, a sore muscle, a cramp, and it works in 2 minutes. It's awesome stuff. Last one.
Do you recommend chelation or chelating?
I don't know how well that works on the medical side, on the conventional medical side. A lot of them use EDTA. Do you know what type of chelation it is? Okay. So a lot of them use EDTA. EDTA works, but if you consume it, you lose most of it through the stomach acids. You can actually do it as a suppository, and it works better. But there's natural chelating agents that God has given us. So, and chelate, just FYI, if anyone is wondering, because I like words, chelate is from the Greek word, it means to claw. So it binds something and pulls it out. So that's what these enzymes and these other things I mentioned are doing. I cannot answer as to how well conventional chelation therapy works. Thanks, guys.